Ability during Senator Hatch's speech, and thank Senator Duckworth and Senator Cortez Masto for their involvement in leadership and passion about these issues. I first ask unanimous consent that my health fellow, Krista Wagner, be granted floor privileges for the remainder of the calendar year.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. I listened to Senator Hatch for many moments, not so many moments ago, and I was pretty struck by his analysis of these two nominees that are about to come forward, Senator Mnuchin and Senator Price. And I was struck by Senator Hatch's suggestions of their high ethics and honesty and ability to serve in these two exalted, and he's right about that part, exalted cabinet posts, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Congressman Price, Secretary of Treasury, Mr. Mnuchin. And what struck me is I was sitting in the same committee room as our respected chairman, Senator Hatch. I'm sitting in the same room, and I heard these two nominees lie to the committee. Lie to the committee, not sort of a Trumpian lie, not kind of at the edges, sort of misspeak or kind of confuse things, but out and out lie. Senator Mnuchin, Mr. Mnuchin, he forgot he had a $100 million investment, I believe, somewhere in the Caribbean. I don't know if too many staff here or too many even of my fellow members who are better off than most of the country financially. I don't know too many people that would forget they had a $100 million investment somewhere. He forgot to tell the committee that. Then, that was pretty bad. But then he told the committee, in question and answer to me, he said that his bank, One West, that he was in charge of, or he was the CEO for a period of years, that they didn't do any robo-signings. And, okay, what are robo-signings? Robo-signings are a way that his bank staff signed document after document after document very quickly without looking at those documents that ended up causing foreclosures in my state. Hundreds of people in my state lost their homes because of One West robo-signings. And he told the committee that he didn't do robo-signings until later. The Columbus Dispatch, the most conservative newspaper in my state, the newspaper that almost never endorses a Democrat, a newspaper that has generally supported President Trump on most issues. They kind of sort of like one bird flies off a telephone wire. They all do with Columbus newspaper. And they talked about how Mnuchin lied to the Finance Committee. So Senator Hatch talks about their integrity and what great public servants, except he lied to his committee about something like robo-signing. My zip code, I live in zip code, my wife and I live in zip code 44105, Cleveland, Ohio. That doesn't mean much to people listening. But you know what it is? That my zip code 10 years ago, my zip code in the first half of 2007 had more foreclosures than any zip code in the United States of America. So I take that personally when somebody comes in front of me in front of the United States Senate committee, in front of the American people, and lies about something he did that turned hundreds, if not thousands in Ohio. We still don't have enough information about it. Turned their lives upside down. Imagine when you're foreclosed on. You probably can't if it hadn't happened to you. Hadn't happened to me, but I've heard people tell the stories. You go to your children and you say, we're going to have to move, honey. You're going to have to move school districts. I don't know where we're going to live. I don't know where your friends are going to be. You're going to be far from your friends. We're going to have to move because our house is foreclosed. And I was paying the mortgage, but this bank called One West did this to us. So that's number one. Then he talks about Congressman Price. And Congressman Price, he kind of didn't tell the committee the truth either. You could say lie, or you could use whatever term you want to use. But he, and this is in the Wall Street Journal, again, one of the most, maybe the most conservative paper in the country. Representative Tom Price got a privileged offer to buy a biomedical stock at a discount. Company officials said contrary to his congressional testimony. See, this is sort of Wall Street Journal language for lie, because he said this and it said contrary to his testimony. I would, in Cleveland, Ohio, or in Garfield Heights, or in Cincinnati, we would say lie. Here they say, because they wanted to dress it up, because they wouldn't want one of their people to be accused of something. That was my point. In Congressman Price, I'm pretty amazed. In any other period, President Trump, candidate Trump, talked about draining the swamp. And draining the swamp, when he says that, but it really kind of does look like the White House looks to be a sort of an executive retreat for Goldman Sachs, a retreat for Goldman Sachs executives and the people Heath hired in the White House. But to hire two people that have these kinds of ethics, I mean, Congressman Price, as a member of Congress and a prominent member of Congress in the House, he bought, as a congressman working on health care issues, he bought and sold health care stocks, profiting from it. In one case, he got this special privileged offer that most people didn't get, and then he lied to the committee about it. So that's bad enough. But look what he wants to be the Secretary of. He wants to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Why does that matter? Well, here's why it matters. He's got these views on Medicare that are so out of step with the country. For instance, he said in July 30, 2009, nothing's had a greater negative effect on the delivery of health care than the federal government's intrusion into medicine through Medicare. That sounds like John Birch Society 1965 when Medicare passed overwhelmingly in the end because everybody saw how good it was. But they opposed it because it was socialism or some such term they used to describe Medicare. I don't know too many people that actually receive Medicare unless they're members of Congress that really think that Medicare is socialism. And Medicare has worked for, back in 1965, Senator Durbin, he doesn't remember this as a member of the Senate, but he remembers this figure I'm going to give. In 1965, when LBJ signed Medicare, 50% of Americans 65 and older had no health insurance. Today, that 50% has shrunk to less than 1% of Americans that age don't have health insurance. Think about that progress and what this means. Congressman Price, I mean, he wants to be the head of Medicare. He wants to be the head of Medicaid. He wants to be a head of the agency that's going to implement the Affordable Care Act if he can't repeal it. And think about this. He wants to privatize Medicare. He wants to voucherize it. He's voted consistently for Republican budgets in the House to do that. And you know what else he wants to do that's particularly offensive to me? And it's offensive because we all sit here and we dress well and we have good titles and we get paid well and we have insurance funded by taxpayers. He wants to raise the eligibility age for Medicare. So look around my state, Mr. President. The presiding officer grew up not far from where I live in Cleveland, Ohio. He knows his adopted state way better, but he knows my state still, and he knows what this means. If you're a barber in Garfield Heights, you got to wait till 67 or even to 70, according to Congressman Price, before you're eligible to draw Medicare. If you're a carpenter in Westlake, Ohio, you got to wait till you're 67 or 70 to draw Medicare. If you're working construction in Lima, Ohio, or if you're working a manufacturing plant in Mansfield, Ohio, if you're working retail in Cincinnati, Ohio, if you live in Zanesville and you wait tables in a diner, you're going to wait till you're 67 or 70 until you can draw Medicare. That's what Congressman Price wants to do. So not only are his ethics challenged, that should be reason enough that he should step aside. Buying and selling stocks, healthcare stocks, as a member of Congress while you're voting and helping those companies, that's bad enough. But what he wants to do to maybe the greatest program in American history, Medicare, is much, much worse because that affects people in those towns I mentioned, in Garfield Heights, in Westlake, in Zanesville, in Cincinnati, in Mansfield, all over. Because, I hope I'm healthy enough to continue working and continuing serving in the Senate, and the voters obviously would have to say that between now and then. I hope I can work till I'm 67 or 70 in this job. But I know a lot of people that work outside, that are on their feet all day, that work with their arms and their shoulders. They can't work till they're 67 or 70, and it's immoral. It is immoral for members of this body to support a candidate, to support somebody who's going, or to vote for something like this that will raise the Medicare eligibility age. I'll close with this, Mr. President. I was in Youngstown one day at a town hall, and a woman stood up and she said, she was clearly in probably early 60s. It turns out I could sort of calculate her age from what she said. And she said, she put her hand up, she stood up, and I called on her. She's about 200 people there, and she said, I work two jobs. I don't make a lot of money. I'm getting by. I work two jobs. Neither of my jobs has health insurance. And she said, I'm 63. My goal in life, think about this. The page is thinking about this. They're not thinking a lot about Medicare. My colleagues think, I'm 63. My goal in life is to live 18 months more so I can get Medicare. Think about that. Your goal in life, her life was such that her goal in life wasn't to get to know her grandchildren better, or help her kids out, or maybe take a trip to New York City or even Cleveland. Her goal in life was to live long enough to have Medicare. So, you know, I'd like Congressman Price to actually meet her. And like Congressman Price to say, well, lady, you know, your goal in life needs to be you can live 3.5 more years so you can be 67 or 70 to get married. I mean, think about the morality of this, Mr. President. You know, Congressman Price, I know him. I don't know him well. He's a nice enough guy. But voting for somebody that wants to raise the Medicare eligibility age, that to me is immoral. It shows how out of touch. I'm guessing that most of my colleagues that will vote for Congressman Price have really never sat down with somebody that would think it's a really bad idea, not to mention immoral, to raise the Medicare eligibility age. So, Mr. President, I plan to join a lot of my colleagues in voting no on Congressman Price. I just think it's the wrong move for our country. I think it's the wrong move for particularly senior citizens in this country who depend on Medicare and on Medicaid, people of all ages. It's clearly the wrong move for our country. Mr. President, I yield the floor.